19 children dead, 2 adults dead, shot at Robb Elementary School. This is TLAL. I'm Matthew Leffler. Let's talk about the Second Amendment. Now, I have been racking my head over this for the last 24 hours. I have a 6-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. And there is no greater loss than the loss of a child. I have friends that have lost children. My wife lost her brother. There's nothing we can say or do now that will bring back the dead. Over the next few weeks, we're going to see a lot of information about gun control or mental health. We're going to talk about freedom and the Bill of Rights. And there's nothing I can add to that. I don't have a really strong opinion one way or the other. What I do have, what I do want to do, is take some time to talk about the Second Amendment. And to do that, I'm going to use a few different sources. My hope is that you watch this video and you will learn a little bit more about this amazing country we live in and the history that informs how our Constitution works. In this program, this short video, we'll use a few different things that inform how we think about it. The things we're going to cover is the Second Amendment, Shay's Rebellion, and a case that's not that old, surprisingly, called McDonald versus the city of Chicago. Informing this conversation are a few things. First, the Federalist Papers. These were various letters and papers written during the foundation and formation of our Constitution, including the Bill of Rights. On the other side, you have the Anti-Federalist Papers, the generally against centralized government and more individual freedoms. Finally, this will be informed by Constitutional Law, a giant textbook that I had while studying as a lawyer. For those that don't know, I go by the moniker, the armchair attorney. I have practiced law since 2010, but not really day-to-day for quite some time. I'm a legal enthusiast, and what I like to do is explain things to help people understand complex topics. In this environment, it's important to understand the foundational documents that inform how our society operates. And the Second Amendment is not as easy as you think, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with the document. Now, the Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, was first ratified in June 21st, 1788. I'm going to read to you the text of the Second Amendment. It's not that long, 27 words to be precise. Quote, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Let's read that again. A well-regulated militia. The militia part we'll get to in a moment. Being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, the Bill of Rights was not something that everybody agreed to. If you go back to the Federalist Papers, they were very adamant. They didn't think a Bill of Rights was necessary. They believed the Constitution as it sat was sufficient. Now, again, a little bit of further background. The entire words within the Constitution is about 1/4 of the words in the book, Mr. Popper's Penguins. I like to look at Mr. Popper's Penguins as a good way to understand just how many words are in something. So, Mr. Popper's Penguins has far more words than the U.S. Constitution. Now, the Bill of Rights was something that was deeply, deeply, deeply contested. It took a long time. The general consensus at the time was that if the government was by the people and for the people, they would not want to impede the rights of others. And again, when it comes to the Bill of Rights, this was a discussion about federal power. This was not generally a question about state power to regulate and enforce policies against their citizens. The worry in this time period in the 1780s was not about state governments overreaching. It was about the federal government overreaching. Let's talk a little bit more about Shay's Rebellion. This is an absolutely fascinating period in American history. And I urge you to take a read of Shay's Rebellion. Go to the Wikipedia page. I'll put a link in it in the show notes. Shay's Rebellion took place between August 29th, 1786 in February of 1787. The very foundational aspect of Shay's rebellion was Revolutionary War veterans that were not being paid. They didn't have money. They weren't being compensated for the work that they did. The federal government didn't really have the resources to fund a standing army. It was never part of what the Articles of Confederation were about. Now, this is not supposed to be a deep dive into Shay's rebellion, just to give you kind of a primer. But what ends up happening is they start seizing things. Over 4,000 people join this rebellion. And how do you stop a rebellion? An armed rebellion with soldiers, no less. Well, you can't go to the federal government. They don't have the power, the money, or the resources to make an army to stop this. Instead, you turn to private militias, state-sponsored militias. In this case, the state government of Massachusetts funded a militia to stop Shay's rebellion. Now, in this moment, you had not a ton of people. There were casualties. In the overall, 6 people were killed on the side of Shay's rebellion, the anti-government protesters, and about 3 people were killed from the militia. But this militia that was funded privately and was, well, the state of Massachusetts, really changed the way our founding fathers were thinking. Remember, the Anti-Federalists were very skeptical of strong federal government. They didn't want to believe in a standing military, let alone a strong federal government. But this gave everyone pause. What happens when there is internal discord? How do you stop it? And that is what helps inform how the Bill of Rights gets passed to begin with. Now, there is a lot of historical pushback. Lots of different sides as to how influential Shay's rebellion is to the overall foundational documents. But from my perspective, going back to those 27 words, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So now we have some context. We have the document. We have the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and we understand a little bit of what was going on between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists in light of this incredible rebellion that was put down by a well-regulated militia. This is the part that a lot of people don't get. This next part, selective incorporation. Now, this is a very specific legal terminology. It is difficult to understand. I will do my best to simplify it and understand. For any lawyers watching, please tell me exactly how I'm wrong. I know you will, and you're very good at that. I urge you to push back when I have these things that I say. Generally speaking, the Bill of Rights was never intended to apply to the state governments. The Bill of Rights was designed specifically to limit the power of the federal government, how the federal government can reach in and modify what you're doing. When did the Bill of Rights and the Second Amendment specifically apply to the states? When day did that happen? What year did that happen? Well, it's June 28th, 2010. This is the case of McDonald versus City of Chicago. In this case, a landowner was having trouble. His house and garage had been broken into 4 times. His property was being littered. He had rifles. He had shotguns. He was a hunter. But he wanted something better for personal defense. And what he wanted was a handgun. And the city of Chicago banned handguns. They did not allow you to buy them. You didn't get to have them. And he sued. He fought against it. Now, when it comes to gun control, what I'll say is a couple things. Number one, we all believe in gun control at some level. Conservative or Democrat, liberal or whatever, we all have some iteration of what we think is appropriate. We don't want our friends and family to own landmines or bazookas or grenades. Now we talk about automatic rifles or semi-automatic rifles or clip size and all of this. Interesting points to talk about, but that's not what we're here for. This case in 2010 went to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, and the 7th Circuit said no. The Second Amendment does not apply to the states, to the incorporation doctrine, or the Privileges and Immunity Clause. However, when it went to the Supreme Court in a decision of 5-4, it was found that this was, in fact, incorporated. The incorporation doctrine is something you should all learn more about, but we're getting close to the 10-minute threshold, and we'll be ending the video soon. What I will urge you to do is watch this, learn about these things, and we'll do a live Q&A in the upcoming weeks.